Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened about 5 years ago. Our family owned 2 apartment buildings, 3 units each. We lived in 2 of them and rented out the other 4. There's nothing but these 3 flats lining both sides of the road for about a mile. Not all have parking. On the side streets are houses and very little street parking. We had more land than most of these units since it was also our home. So we had parking for around 16 cars. Everything was fine for literally decades. Then cars started appearing in our parking lot that were not our tenants. I blocked one in one day, went outside to see this jerk, let's call him Mike, drove through our bushes and across the yard to get out. I called the cops. Officer Johnson showed up, but he just shrugged and said, "Sorry ma'am, not much we can do here." Frustrated, I called a tow company and had them put up signs. We'd have to call them to have a car towed. The signs seemed to work. No more random cars. Until New Year's Eve one year. I arrive home and every space is filled. There are even cars on the street blocking in the other cars. I'm beyond pissed. I call the tow company. They can't do anything for a few hours because they are so busy. We're in the Minneapolis suburbs. It's below 0 out. I have an idea. I dig out the lawn sprinklers and hoses. I run one hose inside to the laundry room faucet and turn on the hot water. This way the hose and sprinklers won't ice up, but the cars and ground sure did. 3 sprinklers moved every half hour or so, for almost 5 hours. My husband Tom came out at one point. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Teaching these trespassers a lesson," I replied, grinning mischievously. Every car, every square inch of the parking lot, the street by the cars encased in ice. I made it a point to spray ice in the locks, between the window seals and glass, in the grills. Put away the sprinklers and hoses, went to bed. 4 a.m., furious pounding on the doors, doorbells ringing non-stop. We just smiled and called the cops, waited until they arrived and went outside. Officers Martinez and Chen were holding back laughter. These people were told to park here by their friend, who owned an apartment several buildings away. The same idiot Mike who drove over our bushes. One of the car owners, a woman in her 30s, was livid. "Who did this? This is vandalism." I calmly pointed to the tow sign and said, "Actually, this is private property. You're the ones trespassing. Move your cars or get towed." In our town, cops can ticket on private property with the owner's permission, so all cars were ticketed. They were also towed since nobody could get in their vehicle. As the last car was being towed, Officer Martinez turned to me with a smirk. "Creative solution you've got there, ma'am. Might want to invest in some security cameras for next time." I nodded, suppressing a grin. "Oh, I think I will. Wish we had this on video." The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought my first job out of college would turn into such a nightmare. Fresh out of school with my business degree, I was thrilled to land an entry-level position at a local nonprofit. The organization helped connect low-income families with essential resources, which seemed like meaningful work. Little did I know I was about to encounter the manager from hell. My direct supervisor, let's call her Karen, seemed nice enough at first. She was in her late 40s, always perfectly coiffed, and had that fake sweet demeanor that immediately put me on edge. But I was determined to make a good impression, so I ignored my gut feeling and dove into the job with enthusiasm. The first few weeks went smoothly as I learned the ropes, but then things started to get weird. Karen began asking me to stay late or come in on weekends for various team-building activities or special projects. At first, I didn't mind putting in some extra hours here and there, but it quickly became clear that Karen expected this overtime to be unpaid. "We're a non-profit, sweetie," she'd say with a condescending smile. "Everyone here volunteers their time for the greater good. You wouldn't want to take resources away from the families we help, would you?" I tried to explain that as a full-time employee, I was entitled to overtime pay according to labor laws, but Karen would just laugh it off and change the subject. Before I knew it, I was regularly working 50-60-hour weeks while only getting paid for 40. To make matters worse, Karen started meddling with my actual paid hours. She'd accidentally mark me as absent on days I'd worked or shave hours off my timesheet. When I confronted her, she'd act all flustered and claim it must have been a clerical error, but it kept happening over and over. I started meticulously documenting my hours and taking photos of the timesheet before submitting it. Sure enough, Karen was altering my hours after the fact. In just 2 months, I calculated that she'd stolen over $1,000 in wages from me. I knew I needed to take action, but I was nervous about confronting Karen directly. She had a reputation for retaliating against employees who questioned her. So I decided to go above her head to the nonprofit's executive director. I requested a meeting and laid out all the evidence I'd gathered. My detailed time logs, photos of altered timesheets, text messages from Karen demanding unpaid overtime. The director seemed shocked and assured me they'd investigate immediately. A week went by with no update. Then 2 weeks. Finally, after nearly a month, I got called into a meeting with the director and Karen. My heart sank when I saw the smug look on Karen's face. "We've looked into your allegations," the director began, not quite meeting my eyes, "and we've determined that there's been no wrongdoing on Karen's part. These discrepancies were simply administrative errors that have now been corrected." I was floored. How could they ignore such clear evidence? But before I could argue, Karen jumped in. "I'm disappointed that you'd make such accusations," she said in a sugary voice dripping with venom. "Especially when we've been so accommodating of your, shall we say, work ethic issues." From there, Karen launched into a litany of bogus complaints about my performance, everything from dress code violations to insubordination. It was clear she'd been building a case against me this whole time. The meeting ended with me getting a formal written warning. I left feeling defeated and manipulated, but I wasn't ready to give up just yet. That night, I did some research and discovered that wage theft was a criminal offense in our state. I compiled all my evidence and submitted a formal complaint to the Department of Labor. I also reached out to a lawyer who specialized in employment law for a consultation. The next day, I marched into Karen's office and handed her my resignation letter, effective immediately. Her face turned an alarming shade of purple as she sputtered in rage. "You can't quit! I won't accept this!" she shrieked. "You're abandoning your duties and letting down all the families who depend on us." I calmly explained that I was exercising my right to resign and that I expected my final paycheck, including all stolen wages, within the legal time frame. Karen's eyes bulged as she realized I knew my rights. "You ungrateful little brat!" she hissed. "I'll make sure you never work in this town again." I turned to leave, but Karen wasn't done. To my shock, she whipped out her phone and dialed cop. "Hello, police. I need to report a theft in progress," she said dramatically. "One of my employees is trying to steal sensitive documents from our office." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen was actually trying to have me arrested on false charges. Luckily, I had the foresight to record our conversation on my phone. I calmly waited for the police to arrive, knowing I had evidence to prove my innocence. When the officers showed up, Karen put on an Oscar-worthy performance, fake tears and all. But her story quickly fell apart under questioning. The police reviewed my recording and realized Karen had filed a false report. To Karen's horror, she was the one who ended up in handcuffs that day. Filing a false police report is a serious offense, and Karen was hauled off to the station. I gave my statement to the officers, including details about the wage theft, and they encouraged me to follow through with my Labor Department complaint. The fallout was swift. News of Karen's arrest spread quickly through the nonprofit world. The executive director was forced to resign for failing to address Karen's behavior. A full audit revealed that Karen had been stealing wages from multiple employees and even embezzling funds meant for client services. My wage theft complaint triggered a deeper investigation by state regulators. In the end, the nonprofit had to pay out over $100,000 in back wages and penalties. They also implemented strict new oversight measures to prevent future abuses. As for me, I not only received all my stolen wages plus interest, but I also got a hefty settlement for the retaliation I'd faced. Karen's attempt to blacklist me backfired spectacularly. I had multiple job offers from reputable organizations who were impressed by how I'd handled the situation. These days, I'm thriving in a new role at an ethical nonprofit with managers who actually respect labor laws. And I'll never forget the valuable lessons I learned from my encounter with Karen. Document everything, know your rights, and don't be afraid to stand up to workplace bullies. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. The next one is a petty revenge story. My husband, 30 Imamish, and I, 28F, have only been married for 3.5 months, but we've lived together in the past. I'm constantly picking up and cleaning up while he waits until the clutter gets to be too much. For that reason, I usually leave his desk and other personal spaces alone and tend to other areas while letting him do as he sees fit with his things and areas. The only thing that bothers me is when he doesn't clean up after himself in the kitchen. He'll leave cereal boxes completely open sauce bottles on the counter, all of that. Most of the time, we have to toss the things he leaves out because our kitchen gets so hot, we don't have central air and heat. Yesterday he made a sandwich and left a newly bought pack of bread opened on the table. I brought it to him and made him put it up properly. However, last night I noticed he did it again. This time, I didn't do anything. I waited until this morning, when I knew it would be stale and inedible, and brought it to him again, telling him I'd be buying my own bread and he'd better finish that pack and not touch mine. After arguing with me that it was still edible and realizing it actually wasn't after squeezing the pack of bread himself, he replied, "Well, I don't want to eat that." I just shrugged my shoulders and reiterated that my bread will not be touched. His face was enough for my satisfaction. Update. He ran to the store for our BBQ today and grabbed a bread box too. Also, you all are way too serious. This was written lightheartedly and with his knowledge. Shout out to the few who understood that. I'm gonna go make sure the newly bought bread is in the bread box now. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Cast Karen manager, store manager, meat manager, grocery manager. This story takes place about 2 months before I quit my job at the grocery store and started my first year of college. This story has a bit of exposition, so please bear with me. I was glad when I got to put my Karen manager in her place. Things had slowly started to cool down, and for the next few months it was business as usual. The old store manager had to open another store, so they brought in a new one. This one was very professional and quite kind. This store manager always recognized various employees in different departments for their hard work. This recognition of us lower employees made our Karen manager less than happy. I had started to notice a lot more people being hired and everyone's hours suffered because of it. I found out later they did this because part-time employees could be paid less and they wanted to cut costs. It is the life of a retail worker. I wanted to keep making money in preparation for college, so I went into Karen manager's office and said, "Hey Karen manager, I noticed my hours were being cut, and I wanted to see if I could pick up some extra shifts." She scoffed at me and said, "Karen manager, it's a department-wide decision. If you want hours, go to another department. I wouldn't waste your time though." I looked at her confused and asked me, "Why not?" Karen manager, "They only have hard-working employees in their departments. You wouldn't fit in." I was dumbfounded. I thought Karen's BS bully routine was over, but boy was I wrong. I stood there unsure what to say. Meanwhile, Karen manager had another umbrage smile plastered on her face. I just turned around and walked out of her office. I didn't know if Karen manager had already lied to the other managers or not, but I might as well ask. I first went to the meat department and explained my situation. I told the manager that our department's hours were being cut and asked if I could do anything to help them out. The meat manager smiled warmly and said, "Meat manager, I understand how frustrating low hours can be. We have a guy on vacation for a few weeks and we have had to stay late to wash all the pans and plates for our meat. It's simple washing and drying. You get to wear headphones within reason, and you would make what a starting meat associate would. Want the job?" I was beaming and immediately took the offer. The job was simple as he promised, and I took it seriously. I wanted to show other managers that I was a hard worker and reliable. 3 weeks passed by with no issue. Inevitably, their missing associate came back, and I had to be let go from that position. Luckily, I had spoken to the grocery manager the day before, and our conversation was somewhat similar. I explained my situation and she understood. She said, "Grocery manager, you just need to tidy up the shelves, put out product on aisle-labeled carts, and held unload trucks when they come in. Your pay will be a starting grocery associate pay." For context, both types of associate pay were an increase from my normal department. I took the offer and immediately helped the grocery department. Everything was fine until grocery hired a full-time employee and I had to go back to my normal department. I expected business as usual, but I got one hell of a surprise. The first day back, Karen manager yanked me in her office. The conversation went like this. Karen manager, "What the hell do you think you are doing, OP? I told you our department's hours were cut." Me, "I know, you said I could try working with other departments. You also said some other nasty things, but I don't care to repeat those." She glared at me and said, "Karen manager, OP, you are making our department look bad. We are trying to cut costs, and you are burning through hours we don't have." I decided to correct this smug Karen and said, I understand you want to cut costs and you only have so many hours. I didn't take up any extra hours from our department. I took your rude suggestion and worked for other departments that were short-staffed and had an abundance of hours. I did nothing wrong." She growled at me and said, "Karen manager, listen OP, it's not fair to others in our department if you get full-time and other employees don't." I held my ground and said, "This system of hiring tons of part-timers is stupid and it's hurting quality full-time employees who need the hours." If you insist on hiring all these people, there is nothing stopping them from doing exactly what I did. There are plenty of departments that could use help. I was fed up with Karen's attitude and spoke my mind. Karen manager, if you think my management practice is so ridiculous, you can just leave. I was tired of her BS and just smiled, me. Okay, I will. I turned in my effects and clocked out. I said bye to my friends and drove home. The next day I was enjoying sleeping in for once when I got a phone call. It was the new store manager. I answered. Me, hello store manager, how are you this morning? Store manager, sorry to bother you OP, but could you come back to the store? I looked over the firing of you yesterday and Karen manager was totally out of line. I talked to other managers you have worked for and they all had glowing reviews of your work. We are pretty short-staffed and we need you back. Me. I smiled. It was always nice to be needed after all. If you transfer me to grocery effective immediately with the pay bump to boot, I will help your department when needed, but I want grocery manager as my new boss. Store manager. Done. I just pulled up your file and transferred you over. You have my word. Grocery manager is your new boss and Karen manager has no authority over you anymore. I will be having a long talk with her over her managerial practices, believe me. I smirked and said, Me. I will see you in 10 minutes. I drove to the store and walked in. I picked up my effects from the store manager and shook his hand. I saw the shocked form of Karen manager and snickered. I turned to a nearby customer with a smile. These last few weeks were going to be the best. The next one is an entitled people's story. I think this is the first time in a long while I saw a group of people act entitled, were yelled at by other people in line, and they actually listened. Was waiting in the passport line in Iceland where a lot of flights land very early in the morning and have a short layover, think around 1 HR, before connecting to a new flight. Me and so many others got off our flight that landed at 6:30 a.m., waited in passport control and had to make a connecting flight was taking off at 7:20 a.m. The non-EU side of the passport line had nearly 200 plus people waiting in line and it was going about as fast as it could. So slow, and that's just the reality of it. At 6:30 a.m. most people took their tiredness and knew the best bet was to just wait in line and hope the flight waits for most of its passengers, or just quietly accept that connection isn't gonna happen. Except for one family. Back of the line, one man goes nearly to the front and pesters this half-awake 20-yo kid about cutting in front of him because his flight is leaving soon. No crap, everyone's is. Kid says, sure, I don't blame him. It's too early to argue. Line cutter waves to the back and shouts, he said we can go in front of him! And 6 other entitled folks, his family? They were all dressed in matching tropical vacation clothes, come striding their way up to the spot in the front. Cue uproar from the whole line. What do you think you're doing? Go to the back. Go back to where you were. You aren't special. The line cutter tried to reason his way and say, but we have a connection that leaves at 7:30. And the resounding, we all do too, from the rest of the line was poetic. It was gratifying in real time to see the man look around and see 200 plus people in the exact same situation as him, and he was not special. He finally sheepishly waved his family back to go back to his old spot at the back of the line. I finally made it through passport control and made it to NY flight around 7:10, and my EU partner was able to get to the gate quicker, EU speedy line perks, and begged them to hold the gate and wait for me there, and I was one of the last ones on the flight. I was in the front third of the passport line while the line cutters were way behind me, so I don't know if they made their flight or not, but at least it was some morning entertainment. The next one is an entitled parent story. I, 26F, need help understanding this situation and figuring out how to approach it. A few months ago, I started to realize just how messed up everything is after a heated argument with my mother. The argument was sparked by the fact that I'm dating a man of color, which is unacceptable to her. For context, I come from a mixed background. My mother is white, and my father is from the Balkans. In the country where I was born, my father belongs to a minority group, and people there are generally ignorant and racist. It doesn't make sense to me how my mother can be racist, considering my own father was an immigrant. On top of that, I've also moved to a different country, so I'm an immigrant too. Then, things started to make sense in a painful way. As a child, I used to lie about where I was from when people asked. I did this for many years. I don't know anything about my father's culture, language, or heritage. Because of this, I never fit in at school. I didn't belong with the local kids because I had a foreign last name. And I couldn't fit in with other mixed-race kids because I had no connection to my origins. I was always isolated. After my parents divorced, my mother never took me to see my father's side of the family, even though they lived just 20 minutes away by car. I've always carried a sense of shame. My mother was aware of the lies I told about my background, but never did anything to stop them or help me understand why it was wrong. When my father cheated on her, leading to their divorce, she said of the other woman, "I'd want to see if she would go around telling people where he's from." This made it clear that she has always been ashamed of his background. While my father wasn't a great dad, and certainly not a good husband, though that part doesn't concern me, his shortcomings had nothing to do with his race. Now, after this recent eye-opening experience, I've started to believe that my mother is responsible for the shame I've felt since I was young. I'm trying to understand why she did this. What could drive a parent to instill such shame in their child? If she was so ashamed of my father's nationality, why did she marry him in the first place? Please help me make sense of this because I feel like I'm going crazy over it. Of course, in all of this, she thinks she has no fault whatsoever and is always the victim. In her mind, she did nothing wrong and always served me with a golden plate. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.